So I want to talk to you today, Renee, about screen time with your kids. So I know that you had a video go, I don't know if it went viral, but it got a lot of views. And I think it got a little bit of backlash about when you were at swim lessons with Milo, your son.
Yeah.
And I think like what you had said was like, put your fucking phone down
Oh, I was
on like
so
the clip.
angry.
And people were triggered. People were
Very
really
upset.
triggered by that because I feel like in today's society, we were talking about this over on your podcast, but like we're just in such a fast-paced society and everything is right in front of our hands. Like we can just pick up our phone and do everything. Like we can, arrange play dates, do our grocery shopping, like scroll social media, like whatever. Our work is on our phone. So and it's like, where do we draw the line? So I want to talk about that. So I know that tell me, what are your boundaries with social media, or not social media, but your phone in front of
Okay.
Milo?
I have so much to say about this topic because I feel like when Milo was younger, it wasn't so much of a thing. But now that he's older and it's more so like, if you and I were out for coffee or something and I'm just staring at my phone the whole time or like distracted about my phone, I feel like he's more aware of us having our phones, if that makes sense, because of his age. So
Yeah.
I've been thinking so much about it and trying to, like, when I hear him coming down the stairs in the morning and I'm on the couch having coffee looking at Pinterest or something, I'll put my phone away before he even walks downstairs because I don't want that association of like, oh, mom and dad always are just looking at their phone, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But the thing about swimming lessons, I'm very aware that when we're at swimming lessons, because we're sitting right on the sidelines of the pool, every time he does something, it's his turn to go do something. And there's only 4 kids in his class. He looks to us like,
Yeah.
did you see that? Or maybe he got water up his nose and he like looks to us because he's like scared or whatever it is. I know that that's what's happening. And so I could never just sit there and be looking at my phone. So I started to pay attention to what other parents, because there's a bunch of classes going on at once, like the pool is sectioned off. And I'm looking, and so many parents are just staring at their phone. And
Yeah.
it's all little kids. So I see the little kid, like I know I start to pick up on like which kid is which parent, like, the what's it called? Like the couples.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh my god, like it's her turn. She did something. She's looking to her mom and her mom's just like scrolling Instagram on the sidelines." It broke my
Mm.
heart and I was so pissed off about it. And then I recorded that solo episode. And obviously, I was like, I'm going to clip that part. And then when so many people were, first of all, pissed off at the delivery because I don't deliver messages in a way that some people like, and that's fine. If I were to be like more prim and proper and explain what's happening and, we should really be more aware of our phone usage around our kids and so on and so forth. Like, then maybe it wouldn't have been so triggering for people and they wouldn't have been so defensive. But no, I was like, I'm going to fucking start smacking phones out of parents' hands. And people got so angry. But the majority of the comments that were upset with me were giving excuses as to why they have to be on their phone at their kids' lessons or practices. And I was mostly focused on young kids. Like, I'm not saying your 16-year-old has basketball practice, you have to go sit on the sidelines and like cheer them on and stare at everything that they're doing. Like, that's not what I was saying. I was saying at this age, these young kids, they're constantly looking towards their parents. And not one person that was defensive and upset by my message, not one of them even mentioned how their kids might feel in that
Yeah.
situation. It was all just like super defensive and that's the only time I get to myself and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh my God, I don't care why you're on your phone. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, your child's not like, oh, I did a perfect starfish. I'm going to look up to mommy and daddy and be like, oh, she must be ordering groceries. Like,
Yeah.
no, they don't know what's happening. All they know is that you're not engaged in what they're doing and they're proud and they did something and they're looking to you and you're just staring at your phone. That was, it's interesting because when I post something and it gets really like backlash like that, I do like question it and I think about what my message was. And I was like, no, you know what? I am not changing my opinion on this because I've thought so much about it. And I'm sorry if you're in a situation where you have to be on your phone diligently for the 30 minutes that your child is swimming in the pool and doing their lessons. Like, that sucks, but it doesn't change how it's making your child feel. Like,
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Yeah. And I'm very aware of smartphones now because I'm in this like smartphone vortex of like learning about how we're constantly on our phones and how it's affecting us and so on and so forth. So now I'm super aware of when people are on their phones.
Yeah, I feel like in today's society, like we are expected to do more than we ever have before. And because we have like the convenience of everything being on our phone, our business is on our phone, like everything is on
Yeah.
our phones, right? It's so tempting to just pick it
Get
up
something done.
and get something done really quick. But before you know it, you're like scrolling Instagram and you're like, wait, how did I even
Yeah.
start? I don't know if you're like that, but like I am. I'm like 20 minutes later, I'm like, I picked up my phone to like respond to a text message and now I'm on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I'm
Or
like, why am I on TikTok? Why am I scrolling this? Like, I just wasted 30 minutes of my time. Like,
I
you know,
know. Or you check
yeah,
an email and it's like it's not something that is time sensitive, but you're like, "Oh, I could do it right now."
yeah,
And so I'm trying to be more mindful of that just even for myself of, let's say this afternoon after we record this, I don't really have anything that I have to do. So I'm going to make it a point to either read the book that I was talking about on my podcast or go for a walk because it's super nice out today and not just get sucked into checking emails and trying to get things done that don't have to be done today. Like,
yeah,
because then what happens is you're just going 24/7 if you're not mindful about taking those breaks. And with regard to always being on your phone around your kids, I think about being, Milo being like 15, 16, and thinking back to these years and being like, holy fuck, I wish I was not on my phone so much. Like, looking back on our phone usage, I think 10 years from now, maybe even sooner than that, 5 years, we're going to be like, wow, like
yeah.
there was a problem in our society when it came to phones.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to do this right now too with my girls. So one of my boundaries is like at 5 p.m. until they
Yes.
go to bed, like I'm not on my phone. And it's
Yes.
and like I'll be good for like a week and I'll just like get sucked back into it because I feel like there's always like these things that just seem so pressing. And especially as like a single parent, I'm like, okay, well, when am I going to have the time to do this? Especially because I mean, we're struggling with my 3-year-old right now with bedtime. So it's not like she just
Mm.
like goes to bed. Like I have to like be in her room for like an hour until she falls asleep. So, it's not going to last forever, but I'm curious, like what boundaries have you put in place being on your phone around Milo? Is it like when he's home, you're not on your phone at all, or I'm curious, like what boundaries you've set there?
So I give myself leeway on the weekends but I do mentally take note that, the entire morning on Saturday, like if we're playing outside or we're playing with the neighbors' kids or we're out and about doing something, like my phone is away. I think it is really helpful when you have your phone put away or you're not picking it up for a significant amount of time. So if you're thinking, okay, I'm not going to do anything major on my phone, but you're still consistently checking it, it's not the like relaxed mind or like you're constantly thinking about your phone. In that book that I was telling you about, The Anxious Generation, and I need to write down this quote because I keep wanting to talk about it, but I don't remember what the exact words are, but he's basically saying that with our phones, like, yes, it's a blessing that we can get all this stuff done on these little things, but it's also a curse. And nowadays, nobody is ever fully present. Like, you're existing somewhere else when
Yeah.
you have your phone around. And when you're, like, waiting for a text message, or as soon as you get a notification, you're picking up your phone and then you're sucked into checking emails and responding to an email. So, for starters, it's putting the phone away on the weekends for long periods of time. That's been amazing. We have a phone box. It's literally just like a box from HomeSense, and I put a piece of paper on it that says phones between 5 and 9 p.m. So some days, not when my husband's on call, or if we have swimming lessons, if it's like a busy evening, we don't do it, obviously, but if we're just going to be home, it's the phones go in the box. We did it for a week straight. And I think even just doing that for a week kind of resets your mindset when it comes to how to use your phone, because you just spent a full week not even using it in the evenings and it was totally fine and you actually
Yeah.
quite enjoyed it. So I recommend doing something like that and just seeing how it makes you feel. And then, like I said, I'm just like hyper aware of Milo not seeing us on our phones all the time. So my husband's not necessarily the same, but I catch him all the time and I'll be like, phone, phone, like, put your phone
Does he
away.
get
And he's
mad
like,
when you do that?
oh, yeah. He's like, oh my God, here we go. Or it's always something like he's always doing something, like we were saying, productive. He's like, I'm
Yeah.
looking for a new belt for Milo for his pants, or
Yeah.
I'm looking up this, or I'm trying to do this. And I'm like, I don't fucking care. Like, do it later. Like, not
Yeah.
right now. But to your point, when you're having difficult bedtimes, or just even in general as a parent, because always in the back of my mind, I'm like, as soon as Milo goes to bed, I don't want anything to do, like nothing to
Yeah.
do. So it's easy to be like, I want to get all this stuff done while he's awake so that as soon as he goes to bed, I can just watch Below Deck and chill. But so, like, there is a balance. And I don't know, have you ever tried time blocking?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So, like,
Yeah. Do like a 2 hour of work and then take like a 5 or 15 minute break. Is that what you're talking about?
well, for me, like, I don't practice time blocking probably as you're supposed to. For me, what I have is just, I guess, a schedule. But with being a content creator and podcasting, you can just work 24/7. So
Hmm.
now I set up my weeks so that I know what has to be done on Monday, what has to be done on Tuesday, Wednesday, so
Oh,
that I'm only doing those things on those days, so that then if I get those done during the day, I don't have anything pressing that has to be done. Like, it can wait till
yeah.
tomorrow. So then I feel more at ease in the evening not having my phone, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense 100%. I've actually thought of doing that, like something similar like that for myself because yeah, it's always like there's always something to do. There's always another piece of content to edit or to
Oh, yeah.
record or to, whatever, or these emails to respond to. Like there's literally always something in this line of work and it is just like 24/7 and it's so easy to
Yeah,
burn
and you
out and
start
I've
to feel
thought that.
guilty if you don't
Yeah.
keep up and do more and do more and do more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and also we're just in such a fast-paced society that's like your work email is on your phone. Like you should respond to those emails like as soon as you
instantly.
get them or text messages. It's like if you wait 24 hours to respond to an email or a text message, like does that affect like my perception or, our
Yeah,
brands or, partner's going to think that I'm not serious about this or that I'm a slacker. And so you do feel like you always have to be going, but I mean, you burn out. Like
I
I know for
know.
myself, I feel burned out sometimes.
And one thing I will say about that kind of stuff is it's very valuable when your child is of a certain age to be like, I'm going to be working for 10 to 20 minutes and then we can go play outside. We can do something. Like, let your kid know that you are checking out, even if they're old enough. Like, go into a different room, get what you have to get done, do it, and then go and be present instead of sitting there trying to half ass both things. And now you're
Yeah.
frustrated because you're trying to write an email and they're bugging you for something. And so that's been very helpful. Even the other day, I just wanted a break. Like I had been going all day, all day, all day. It was on Sunday. And I finally lay down on the couch and Milo's like, Mom, can you read these library books? And I was like, fuck. Like, I just want to lay down. And so I said, and I felt so bad because I'm like, oh, he wants to read. Like, this is so good. But at the same time, I knew I needed just a 10-minute break. And so I told him, Mommy's going to lay down. Like, we can watch your Godzilla movie for 10 minutes and then we can read the books. So I feel better about things when I give him like a timeline or I explain mommy has to get a little bit of work done. Mommy has to, I'm going to take a little break and then we can read the books. Like it just feels better instead of, being frustrated and be like, no, like I'm not reading them or reading them and being pissed off
Right.
while I'm reading them and then not honoring the fact that I've been going all day and I just need a little rest.
Yeah. Does Milo just like accept that when you tell? I know he's almost 6, so he's a little bit older, but when you tell him like it'll be 10 minutes till I can read this book, like because mommy needs to take a break, is he just like okay
No,
or
it took a little bit of explaining and he was
yeah?
like, "What, Mom? What? Like I'll turn the pages and you just like read the words." And I'm like, "No, I
Oh,
don't think you're getting it. Like
yeah,
it's not going to happen." But
yeah,
I mean, we ended up just looking at the pictures and I was like, "Fine, I'll look at the
yeah,
pictures." But still, and then I was thinking about it afterwards and I was like, it's probably a good thing for him to understand that, people need to rest and people need a break every now and then. It's
yeah,
if that's something that we just like didn't exist in our house and it was constantly like go go go, then him as an adult, like, so I kind of felt good about explaining to him, like we've been outside all morning. Mommy just dusted all the stupid freaking blinds in the house. Like I just want to lay down for a second. And so I was like, yeah, I feel good about my decision to tell him that.
yeah. I think that's important too. And I think about this all the time because I really struggle with mom guilt and feeling like I have to constantly be entertaining my kids, that I'm responsible for, if they're bored, like I need to figure out like something for them to do, whether it's a play day or a craft or like whatever. And I just get like that overwhelming guilt by just like relaxing or, resting or telling my kids, no, I can't play with you right now because, I need a break or I'm cooking dinner right now. I just like it's just like this overwhelming guilt that I feel, but I try to think about my own childhood. I don't know if
Me
yours was
too.
like this, but I'm like, I don't remember my mom ever like really playing with me. And I don't have any like hard feelings. I never thought about it until I became a parent. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I don't think she did that.
Mm-hmm. This
Yeah.
is like a lot of the anxious generation. That book, he touches on this as well, how before, like I was saying, it was a lot of unstructured, unsupervised, just like kids figuring it out. Like there's a little bit of a risk of like a risky play situation that kids need for development nowadays. What was the stat? It was like working moms today spend way more time with their kids than stay-at-home moms did in like the 80s, I think it
Yeah.
was.
I think it's the 70s.
Yeah. And I remember every day after dinner, my mom and my dad would have a tea in the living room and like look at the newspapers. That's like ingrained in my mind, you know?
Mm.
And I'm like, that's so interesting. Like I
Yeah.
would never think. I'm trying to be better at that though. Like the other day at bedtime, usually we're like engaged in what, like we're watching Bluey or something, and instead I just read my book beside him and I was like highlighting things and making notes, and I was like, oh, this feels nice, like I'm
Yeah.
able to do something that I enjoy. He's watching his show, and I feel like it's an age thing too. Like he's getting older, and so that is just going to become more common for us. But yeah, the feeling of constantly having to be there. we have two little kids next door, and they're the Milo always wants to go over and play on their play set in the back. And I'm like, sure, go ahead. Like, they're friends. And the dad is always like, I'll watch Milo. Like, it's totally fine. Like, you can go do whatever you want. But Milo's like, Mommy, I want you to stay. I want you to
Yeah.
stay. And I'm like, ugh, like, at what age are you just gonna like play by
I know.
yourself?
I know.
So I'm like sitting on the back deck with the neighbors, like, which is also nice, like chit chatting,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
it'll be nice when he can just go outside and play.
Yeah. Well, and I also just have like this fear too. Like, I live in like a nice neighborhood and I love my neighbors and stuff, but I'm just like, do I let them just like go over to someone's house that like I know, but I don't know them so well? Like, I know I would do that when I was a kid and it was fine, but it feels like today's society is different for some reason, just
Yep.
because there's just more information or there's more risks. And so I'm like, no, you can't go over there unless I'm over there,
Yeah.
or there's an adult or it's someone that's like one of my best friends. Like, it's just such a like a tricky situation. So you, as a parent, you feel like you have to always be doing those things, but then you have parental like other responsibilities as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to like the phone thing, is that parents today are expected to do more than they ever have before. And so they're trying to quickly order groceries or take a second for themselves and scroll Instagram and or whatever. But I don't know, it's like such a tricky thing, and it's hard to know like what the right answer is. I'm also gonna play devil's advocate here.
Yep.
Sorry, I know that, but like with your book, like sitting, like your kid, my kids watch Bluey too right before bed. Like, I'll let them watch 1 or 2 episodes. Sometimes I will be on my phone. Sometimes I just try to be with them. And other times I'm like, okay, I'm gonna quickly like respond to these DMs or whatever while they're watching their show, but I'm
Oh
right
yeah.
there with them. So do you think that there's a difference between like being like reading your book versus like actual screen
I
in those types of moments?
When Milo's engaged in a movie or a TV show, like right now, he's really into Godzilla. So if he's actually sitting there engaged in a show, that doesn't bother me at all. Like
Okay.
like I'm like reading a book, checking emails. Like that's when I take time to try and get something done. And I'll say like, "Oh, mommy's going to do some work while you watch your show." Because he's not looking for me to interact with him or like engage
Yeah.
with him. He's like fully engaged in his show. So it's like, okay, sweet. I'll do something
Okay.
too, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And that, yeah, there's a difference between that and like your child like swimming or at their dance recital and they're showing you something that they've been trying really hard to do and they're proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
That totally makes sense. That's like totally different situation versus like
Or
watching a show.
listen to this situation. This also really broke my heart. Milo had a dentist appointment, so we're waiting in the waiting room, and it was us and another mom and a little kid, probably like Milo's age, and then one younger, probably 2.5, 3. The older kid that was about Milo's age, and the mom just on phones, and then
Hmm.
the other little kids just sitting there. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking in that moment, like, obviously, if I was by myself in a waiting room, I might be checking emails, like doing something like that. But I remember thinking, I would never take out my phone right now when I'm in this waiting room with Milo, waiting to go into the dentist because he's by himself. Like, what? He's a
Yeah.
human sitting beside me, and I'm just like, screw you. I'm going to sit here and stare at my phone. I felt so bad for that little kid. Like, she's just like sitting there,
No.
two family members just glued
Yeah.
to their
In their own
phones.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I think about it too, try to think about it too, is like if you were sitting there with your friend or your mom, would you be pulling out your phone like scrolling Instagram? No, because that would be so rude to do
I
that. Like, you would be
know.
talking to them.
But we treat kids like they're nothing.
Yeah.
And we're just on our phones 24/7 like they don't matter. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting and I'm starting to pick up on it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's something to be like just aware of. And at the end of the day, like, you know what
Just do
you're
your
doing on your
best.
phone and you know your usage and like if you're doing your best or whatever, like there's going to be times where maybe you have to do it, but just I think being aware, and I think yeah, just like bringing that awareness is like really important.
Yeah.
Okay, I also wanted to talk about like parenting vlogs and showing children online, and I'm so interested in this because I just listened to the podcast about Ruby Frankie. I don't know if you know who she
Oh, was it
is.
good?
So good. It's just about
I
the
gotta
whole,
listen.
yeah, it's really good. And yeah, I'm not like one of those people that like can really binge podcasts or like even TV shows, but it was one that I like finished in a week. It was so good. But anyway, if you don't know who this woman is, she is like a YouTube vlogger. She had like 2 million on YouTube or something. She's from Utah, like so my home state. And anyway, it like turns really dark. So they have, I think they had, did they have 6 or 8? No, they had 6 kids. And anyway, but like they just like are putting their family out online. I know there's a lot of other accounts that do this too. And like one of them that I was like looking into is like this Ren Eleanor
Mm.
girl who's like, I think she's like 4 years old or something.
Yep.
And her mom just keeps posting like these videos. She has like, I don't know, 16 or 17 million followers. And like, from my understanding, there's like a lot of saves on these videos. Some of the videos like could be like suggestive.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like a creeper, like you might look at those videos differently than just an innocent person that just thinks it's cute, right? And so I've like wondered so much about like what are the impacts of like social media and kids being in these vlogs. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that or?
Again, as Milo gets older, probably when he was 4, I started to really just remove him from the majority of my content. Like he'll be there every so often. Like I'm not super strict about it, but I definitely think about it every single time it like shows up in my content. I'm like it's like a conscious decision. Like I'm very aware of it now, whereas before it was just kind of like da da da, like filming my life, like nothing mattered.
Yeah.
But now that this topic, and again, it's like in the pandemic, that's what everybody was doing. Everybody was home with their kids, and Milo was like 18 months old, and it was mom content, and he was in a lot of videos. As he started to get older, again, he's now more aware. He's got like a personality, like he goes to school. It's, it feels so different. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know what to think. Like, I love talking about this topic because there's so much to discuss and there's so much nuance. And this is the point I was trying to make about the Ren Eleanor thing on the podcast not too long ago was like, people are up in arms about this account. Yeah, the account is absolutely terrible and should be taken down by TikTok. There's nothing like where you would look at it and think, oh my God, like that's awful. Like it's a cute kid, but 98% of the content is literally just the kid. It's like little videos of her. It's very like she's exploiting her child. Like that is
Yeah.
obvious. But when it comes to online dangers and predators and your child having a digital footprint that they didn't ask for, where do you draw the line? Like that's what I don't understand. So like I'm well aware and friends with a lot of people who have child focused accounts who have 500,000 videos or followers. So is that a problem? Or like
Yeah.
I feel like the Ren Eleanor thing is being used as an example and it's an easy target because it's so obviously a problem.
Yeah.
But then what like for an account that is child focused content, when is it a problem and when is it not?
Yeah.
Because those online dangers and the digital footprint of your children that they didn't ask for is there regardless of how many followers you have or how much
Right.
content you put out.
Well, and even if you're not a content creator, I mean, if you just have like your own personal Instagram account
Oh,
and you
yeah.
just post pictures of your families, like, that information can be used. I went to the Mom 2.0
Oh,
summit.
you did?
Yeah, a couple
Cool.
weeks ago, and they talked about AI, and it was like kind of scary because there was like this story of this woman who I think that she's a journalist, and they like made up this whole story about how she had like an affair with Mark Zuckerberg, and there was like news clippings, and there was an AI did all of this, and there was like photos of her and Mark together, and it looked real. And like my first thought when I saw that, or when she was talking about it and showing it, I was thought like, oh my gosh, like what about my kids? Or there was a Taylor Swift thing,
Oh,
like not
yeah.
too long ago, where there were like these,
Nude
nude photos
photos,
of her, but
fake
they weren't
photos.
real. They
Yeah.
weren't real, but it was her face and it looks real. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, so I've been thinking a lot more about it, over the last month or two. My kids aren't the main focus of my account. I didn't even start posting on social media to like be a creator or anything like that. Didn't expect that to happen. And now that I'm here, I'm like reconsidering all of it, which is why I'm interested in it. It's like, yeah, where do we draw the line? Like at what
Mm-hmm.
point? Like when they are child actors, when they're the main focus, how is that based on how many followers you have? Those types of things. So
And I
it sounds like,
also wonder, when it comes to child focused accounts, what are those people going to do when their children get older?
yeah.
I often think about that
True.
because, like,
When they're
my
18 and it's their own
entire,
account.
yeah, like my entire, whatever you want to call it, like my podcast, my social media platforms, it's not relying on Milo, you know?
Yeah.
He pops in every now and then, but when it becomes your full-time job and this is now how you pay the bills, when your child gets older and it's not cute content anymore, what are you going to do to keep making money on your account, and
Yeah.
I wonder if these creators think about that at
I
all.
don't know. Probably not. Probably
Probably
just
not,
like,
but or they're like terrified of the day when their kids are older and now the content is not what it used to be, because like a
yeah.
lot of people, that's their livelihood. They quit their full-time jobs to be a content creator.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or like a YouTube vlogger. Like my kids are obsessed with YouTube Kids, and there's like these, kid focused
Yeah.
vlog style. They always go and do fun things. Like they'll go to Disneyland, or they'll be making like fun slime, or, do
Yeah.
like opening toys or whatever. My kids love it. And like we recently took YouTube Kids away from my kids. Just that's like a whole other thing where like weird videos pop up. Um but yeah, I've like it's kind of given me like a little bit of the ick, because the parents are behind it, and I'm not coming from like a place of judgment, because I don't understand like that whole world. But it's just made me think like, oh, do I really want my kids exposed in that way? And also I just watched the documentary on, I think it's Hulu, about Nickelodeon and like the child stars, and it
I
just like kind
have
of
to
like,
watch this.
it's so good, but it just broke my heart. And it's like those kids are just exploited, and
What's it called?
working, and
Quiet on Set?
yeah,
Quiet on Set. I need to
yeah,
watch.
it's
Thank you
really
for
good.
reminding me. Oh my gosh, I need to watch that.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
YouTube
Anyway,
is like a whole other beast, and it's very interesting.
yeah. Do you let Milo watch YouTube, or what type of screen time do you let him have?
He's pretty good with keeping busy and playing with toys, but after school, if he wants to watch TV, like that's fine. Right now he's into Godzilla, so he's literally watching like adult Godzilla movies. It's like,
Oh wow,
I'm like,
adult
okay,
ones.
you do you, whatever.
Yeah,
They're only rated PG, and it's like
yeah,
Godzilla and King Kong fighting. So I'm like, I think that's okay. I don't know, maybe I should ask like a parenting expert, but anyways, he does ask to watch YouTube Kids quite a bit. So he usually will watch it for like 15 minutes in the morning before we go to school, or after school if he asks for it. But like we try to keep him busy and not watching TV, especially now that the weather's getting nice. Like we'll go
yeah,
outside or whatever. But I'm not like I'm not against screens. I'm not, as long as the content is appropriate. But his whole thing on YouTube, there's a channel called Colin Amazing, and they do trick shots. That's all they do, is like trick shots. It's this family. They have like I think the three boys are involved in the YouTube channel, but it's their older brother. He's like 14, 15, that just they film trick shots all over the house, like basketball, like throwing ping pong balls in like red Solo cups.
Yeah.
He is so into that. And it's actually been really nice because now we do that around the house. So
Oh,
we bought red Solo cups, ping pong balls. They flip the water bottles like over and over again, doing basketball shots in the front yard. Like he's so into that. And they have like almost 4 million subscribers. And I can just imagine the money that these channels generate. Like it blows
yeah.
my mind. But then at the same time, I don't think their parents are involved at all. I think it's the teenage brother.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm always curious, like, what's the dynamic there? Because the other two boys are younger, like, let's say 5, 7, maybe. So, like, it's just
Hmm.
very interesting to think about. Like, I
Yeah.
think about this all the time.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Renee, is about deciding to have more kids. So I know that you've talked a lot about this on your podcast and social media. So Milo's an only child. So I don't, have you decided if you're done, or how do you come to that decision?
Okay, it's a roller coaster of ups and downs and changing your mind. My husband is an only child. So he's always been on board with like just having one child. Me, on the other hand, as soon as I had Milo, it was like early postpartum was so, and I had a pretty normal labor delivery, nothing major. Like, it was pretty good. It was probably like a really good experience. And I was still like, what the hell is this? Like, nobody told me about this. Like, nobody told me how awful the recovery is, like, how painful it is, how on day 3, I can't even sit in a chair and I'm bringing Milo to the doctor's
Right.
office. Like,
Yeah.
what? I couldn't even sit down. Like, it was terrible, the whole thing. And I remember thinking, holy, this is why I started a blog. Like, I started writing about my experience in postpartum because I was like, how does nobody talk about this? Somebody should be shouting from the rooftops, like, just so you know, when you have a baby, like, it's really painful, it hurts. And so, um, anyways, initially I was like, no, not doing this again at all. And then when Milo was older, I was like, oh, maybe, like you see videos of other people having babies and like the glorified
Right.
newborn stage. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. But then once I think about logistics and how my husband's job is not flexible, I'm obsessed with my job and what I get to do. I love being able to like go up to my parents' place or travel for work or go here, do this. Like you start to also, as an adult, get more freedom once your child starts to get older. So I was like, I don't think I want to do that. So then we said no, moved on. And then probably like a year ago, because me and my brother and my sister are all 4 years apart, I was like, oh, like I felt like my like time was ticking. Like you have to decide because they're going to
Right.
be too far in age. Like you can't have them be further apart in age. But then again, like I'm just like, oh, I don't
I
like,
know.
it's such a hard decision. And I talk about this all the time. And so many people message me saying we actually had to go to therapy to decide and help us decide what to do because it is such a massive undertaking to have another child.
Yeah.
And I talked to my mom because my dad worked out of the country a lot of my childhood. And I'm like, Mom, how the hell you had 3 kids and you were just by yourself? My dad would come home for like a few months at a time and then leave again. And my mom was like, we didn't even think about things like this back then.
Yeah.
Like you just had kids, like there was no like thinking about it. Like you just did it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I think about everything. And so, yeah, it's been like up and down of, okay, I'm for sure like, that's it. Like, we're going to have another baby. In those moments where I wanted to have a second, if my husband was like, okay, like we would have a second baby because I was so
Mm.
certain for like a short period of time, and then I change my mind and I'm like, no. And then there's also the guilt that goes with Milo not having siblings.
Yeah.
And so I feel that too, because I'm so close with my sister, and I grew up with a brother and a sister. So yeah, that's like a whole thing too. But at the end of the day, I had to realize some people have siblings and they fucking hate each other and they don't even talk to each other. Like,
That's so
don't
true.
base your decision on something that's not guaranteed, you know?
Right. Well,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. My kids fight all the time. Like they're not, I'm like, are you guys are supposed to be best friends? Like this
But
is
I mean, even as adults, like some families,
Oh
like they don't
yeah.
even talk to each other.
I know. Yeah. So that's not a reason either. And my mom had 6 kids in 12 years, and I've asked her the same thing. And, my dad was here, but he worked long hours, and it was like mostly my mom who, and I'm like, how did you do that?
How?
Like, you had 6 and you were doing, and she's like, oh, I don't know. I just don't think that they thought about it either. Just like popping out babies, and now it's just so different
Yeah.
now. And and I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I'm divorced, so I that's not really on the table for me, but like my youngest, she's gonna be 4 in July, and she's potty trained, and she's getting to the point where she's gonna be more independent. And it's like what I always wanted 3, but I'm like, I don't know, it's nice to be able to have a little bit of freedom,
Yeah.
and like I'm right there. And so maybe I am done, maybe I'll never have another one. So it's hard.
I know. When I look back at videos of Milo when he was a baby, I'm just like, oh
I
my
know,
God, he's
they're so
so
cute.
cute. Does your mom ever talk about not experiencing mom guilt either? Like that wasn't a thing back then?
I don't think she really did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cause
She
my
well,
mom,
yeah, I did ask her actually about like the playing. I was like, "Did you ever just like play with us?" Like, I don't remember that, but maybe I was just like too young. And she said no. She's like, "I just couldn't. I had 6 kids. And I was number 5." So, and she was just like, and I do feel guilty about that like now. And she was like starting to tear up, and she's like, "That's why I really like try to make a point. One of the reasons I really try to make a point to really be present in like my grandkids' lives is like to make up for that." And I told her, I was like, well, I don't have any hard feelings. I literally never even thought about that until I had kids. And I just feel guilty because I'm not doing that. So I think
yeah.
that's what she felt guilt about, but she never really expressed that until like I explicitly asked her.
Yeah. I feel like my mom listens to my podcast and she's like, Jesus Christ, like where are all these things coming from? Like I didn't experience mom guilt or like all the, like gentle parenting and all this stuff. She's like,
Yeah.
we just did what felt right in the moment. We didn't have books and podcasts and social media, people telling us like how to do things. Like we were just kind of on our own and
Yeah.
did what felt right.
I feel like social media has changed that because we can see inside of everyone's lives, and
Mm,
we're only seeing like the curated,
mm-hmm.
what people want us to see,
Yeah.
right?
This is why I get so irritated with some parenting expert accounts because they give you the advice for, okay, your child's gonna have a meltdown, so do this. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna do this, but then it just like ends there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well that didn't
Didn't
work, and now
work.
he's throwing a truck at my face, so now what? Like, you know what I mean? It's never like you just like do these things and then like I'm always like, okay, and then what? Like, what do I
Yeah.
do now? But yeah, you just gotta. I think my mama always says like, oh, I feel bad for parents nowadays because
Mm,
there's just so much like expectation of
yeah.
everything, like working 100%, being a parent 100%, parenting perfectly all the time, and then feeling like as soon as you slip up, you've ruined your child. And it's like,
Right.
no, like we're all human. They need to see different emotions. Like they need to understand apologizing to someone, making a mistake, like how to repair. Like these are all like, we're all just human. And like you said, you think back to your childhood, like so do I all the time. And I'm like, oh yeah, like we're going to be fine. Like
Yeah.
I went through so many different things and like experiences and playing with friends and being made fun of and but nowadays it's like we're trying to shelter our child from every single negative thing. And then they don't grow and develop. And then they turn into an adult that's, working for somebody, and one little thing makes them upset and they're leaving angry comments on our content because they like can't
They're the
handle
trolls.
yeah,
Yeah. They're
like
the
they
troll
can't
accounts.
handle just being a little bit upset. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
That's one thing like I never expected as a parent is like dealing with my kids' difficult emotions and allowing them to feel them, because as a parent you just want to shelter them.
Yeah.
You want to give them the best experience possible. You don't want them to have a meltdown or be disappointed or whatever, and it's hard to sit with those feelings. And I'm the type of person that kind of gets a little triggered and like a little ragey when there's whining and fighting.
Mm-hmm. The
So
overstimulation.
yes, the overstimulation. So I'm trying to work on that and not try to just like fix everything for them, but it's hard.
Yeah. I'm also trying to, what I've noticed is when he was younger, we would give him his tablet on the way to daycare. It was like a half-hour drive. And it was always like, oh my God, we have to have the tablet. Now we've been driving him to school for almost a year now. It's a 25-minute drive. Never do we have his tablet. And sometimes I look in the back seat and he's just like staring outside. And I'm like, good,
That's what we did though.
good. Like, be not bored, but to never want our child to be bored or to always have them be entertained. And God forbid we can't entertain them. Now we're going to put a tablet in front of their faces because we just don't want them to have any kind of negative emotion or be bored.
Yeah.
So I started to really appreciate him just like looking out the window for 25 minutes, and
Yeah.
I'll talk to him like here and there, like try and have a conversation, and he's just like it's so funny.
That's exactly what we did growing up.
Yeah,
I would just look out the window and just daydream and like make up little stories in my head. And
exactly.
yeah. So going back just really quick to deciding to have more kids, are you still kind of in that zone where you're like keep going back and forth, or
No, I'm pretty much like, I don't think
yeah.
we wouldn't have another one now. I don't think.
Yeah.
Like, he'll
Yeah.
be 6 in September, and I just can't imagine. I enjoy our family unit so much, and we're able to just like up and travel, go visit, and I wouldn't want to take that away.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Do you get pressure from anyone like in your family? No. That's
No.
awesome. Yeah.
Sometimes
That's how it should
strangers.
be. Oh,
Strangers like
strangers.
they're always like, "Oh, like, I meet someone at the park and they're like, "Oh, just the one?" And I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, you think you're going to have more?" "No." And they're like, "Oh, you got to give him a sibling." I'm
Oh
like,
no.
"Go away."
You're like,
He
you're
has a
not my friend
dog. We have a
anymore.
we have a Pomeranian. He's fine.
Well, good for you for just like owning it. I know that there's like a lot of pressure. I remember just like one final thought before I wrap this up, but like I remember when I got married, there were people at my wedding reception asking like, "Oh, when are you gonna have kids?"
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
god.
"What? Like that's what we're supposed to do now? Like, can't we just like chill? Like we just
Yeah.
got married 5 minutes ago." Like,
I literally, days after I gave birth to Milo, people were like, "Oh, when do you think you'll have a second?" And I used to
he's also
lie.
bleeding.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I used to lie and be like, "Oh, I don't know, like, we don't know," instead of just being like, "No, we're not having a second," because I felt like people would judge me if I said we're not having a second, because then people would be like, "Oh my god, she must hate being a mom." Like, do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so I would lie and I
Yeah.
would just be like, "Oh, I don't know." And then
Yeah.
finally I realized what I was doing, and I was like, "No, you need to just say that you're not having a second." It's like I didn't want to disappoint people or have them judge me for not wanting more kids, you
Yeah.
know? Like, just because you
Yep.
don't want more kids doesn't mean you don't love having the kids that you have or the child that you have.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Yeah. Well, and that even goes for people who just don't want kids at all.
Oh my God,
I know that
totally.
there's a lot of pressure. I have a brother that him and his partner, they're like, no, we just don't want
Me
kids. We
too, my
want, and they're
brother.
very hands-on, like uncles, and
Yeah.
they're great uncles. My kids love them. And it's like, no, it's just not for us. And I know that they've felt like a lot of pressure from society just to have at least one. And they've gotten to
Yeah.
that point where they're like, no, like this is like our decision. And it's hard.
No, my brother and my sister-in-law don't have kids, don't want kids. And I'm like, this is perfect because I'm like really close with my sister-in-law. She can travel with me anytime I want to travel. Like, it's
Yeah.
lovely to have friends. Also, one of my best friends and her husband, they don't have kids either. And I just
Yeah.
went to go visit them in Ottawa for a couple days. And I was like, visiting you guys is like a different world. It's like quiet in the house. They're like making steaks on the barbecue. Like, we had a hot tub. We're just like having adult conversations with no interruptions. I was like, this is
So nice.
nuts.
Yeah. What is this?
Yeah.
That's great. That sounds really nice. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Renee. And then, you guys, I also was on Renee's podcast as well. So make sure you hop over to the Mom Room and listen to my episode over there. But thanks so much for joining us. And Renee, let us know, we let everyone know where to find you on social and YouTube.
Yes. So the podcast is called The Mom Room and it's everywhere, including YouTube. Go subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to
We
be
were just talking about
YouTubers.
this. Yeah.
So on Instagram, it's at the Renee Rena. That's also on TikTok. And then the podcast also has its own account at the Mom Room Podcast. So those are all the things.
Awesome. Go follow her, and I will link it in the show notes. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.